This is episode number 42 of Colorado TechCast. Hey everybody, Trapper here. Colorado TechCast is a weekly podcast where I interview CEOs and founders of Colorado-based technology startups. Join me each episode as I explore the Colorado technology community from the inside out. Today, I'm joined by Kent Dickson, co-founder and CEO of Yonomi. Kent, thanks for joining the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Trapper.
So we're sitting outside on the patio overlooking Pearl Street in Boulder. Beautiful, sunny, warm day. You guys definitely have the location dialed in.
Yeah, it's a nice amenity, gazing out at the Flatirons out here. It's pretty good.
So tell me a little bit about Yonomi.
So Yonomi is a software platform that is aiming to simplify the connected home and to make sure that the devices that will ultimately come into mass market consumers' homes will work together, will be able to be integrated together so that the consumers will have a better user experience, easier to use, and ultimately with the combination of devices that inevitably will come into home from multiple manufacturers, that the experience for the consumer will be greater than just the sum of the parts. When we got started on the company 6 years ago, it was very early days for smart home and these kind of consumer-grade devices that were coming in to the market, whether it's Nest thermostats or Philips Hue lights, Sonos speakers. None of them were compatible with one another. Individually, they did what they did, and they did that very well. But indeed, the whole was not greater than some of the parts. So fast forward to 2019, there are hundreds of these types of products on the market, and they are finding themselves into lots of mass market consumer homes. And so the journey continues for us to make sure that those products are integrated and integratable with one another to that end.
Okay. This isn't your first go-around with an energy company, right?
Right, and the truth is, Yonomi itself is not an energy company. It's an Internet of Things company. It's a smart home company. But the interesting thing about this is, back in 2008, I went to work for a company called Tendril here in Boulder, who was building a really interesting and forward-looking energy management platform, obviously applying a lot of the Internet of Things and smart grid sort of technologies into this platform that would be able to smartly help consumers use less energy, or at least use it wisely and at the appropriate times. And that was very exciting ride for me. And Tendril persists today, but it was a rocky road for the company. And one of the things that we learned and struggled with very early on there was that consumers aren't necessarily motivated to use less energy, and their utilities are likewise not totally motivated to get them to use less of the product that they sell. And the truth is, even when you're saving a lot of energy, you may not be saving that much money. Energy in this country is still very cheap. And so anyway, there's a lot of headwinds for that company and that product at the time, which Tendril has since sorted through. But as that relates back to Yonomi, we specifically haven't had a focus on energy. What we've had a focus on is convenience and sort of openness of an ecosystem, let consumers and then other developers do interesting things. Now, some of those other developers are actually doing energy management types of solutions now on top of our platform, which is great to see because I care very deeply about energy management, being smarter about how we consume it. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest impact that we, Yonomi, and we, kind of the smart home industry, is going to have on energy management is going to be as a side effect. In that I don't think that consumers are actually going to be motivated any more than they were a few years ago to save a few dollars or a few pennies a month on energy. But what they are motivated on is convenience, comfort, and various other things. And when we can apply some of these smart home technologies and better algorithms and everything else, The side effect of that comfort and convenience will be that they'll also save energy. So that will be a great outcome as well.
So, you mentioned the platform, the underlying platform. Right now I've got a handful of Alexa devices in the house. I've picked up a Google Mini and, the Ring doorbell and the smart locks and things like that. And they're all great, but I have to have an app for each of them. And I have to remember the commands for each of them. And I have to remember, what group is tied into the basement lights versus the office lights. So having a nice platform that kind of ties it all together is hugely beneficial.
Yeah, indeed. That's exactly, I think your journey is not unlike the one that most consumers are on right now. And it's great. Like you say, individually, all those products are really good. But after a while, all that smart stuff ends up adding up to complexity. And that's the battle that we're fighting is try to keep that complexity at bay for consumers.
So simplifying the smart home.
Exactly.
So I was looking at the stats. 30% of homes in the U.S. have smart devices, probably on par with Europe, it sounds like, too. With more and more devices entering the market, people are going to be looking for a unified solution that just ties it all together. So from a consumer focus, are you going to market with apps for the smartphone, or what's the consumer focus there? And then if there's any enterprise or this integrated perspective too?
Yeah, indeed. So we've taken this very sort of different approach, I think. One, we felt like it was really important to be able to demonstrate the vision for what a open agnostic smart home experience looks like. And so we built a direct-to-consumer app to really demonstrate that to the world and to tell the story we were trying to tell. Humans maybe believes something, a fraction of the time when you say it, but when they experience it, they become believers. And so the platform that we built, the first exposure that anybody got to that was through our consumer app, and they can still have that. It's freely available. There's hundreds of thousands of users around the world who are using it today. And that's fun. And as much as anything, they're continually testing our platform with us. And we get better all the time by the more users and the more devices that get added to it. But that platform, too, we've made available as a developer platform so other people can build their solutions on it. And those solutions are of all interesting manners. I mentioned that some of them are actually energy management solutions. Some of them are security-oriented solutions. Some of them are aging in place solutions. Some of them are automotive, actually, solutions, how the car sort of interfaces with the home. And so they're not always apps. They could come in many different formats. We've one developer on the platform, one customer who's actually building a wireless key fob. That's the one fob for everything. It's for your car, and it's where you keep the keys to your house and everything else. But it's also got buttons on it, Bluetooth buttons, that you can assign to Yonomi routines. And you double-click that button. I'm leaving the house. It's going to lock up. It's going to turn off all the lights, adjust the thermostat, turn off the music. So it's really interesting to see once you open a platform. This is what I love about being in the platform business. When you open it up to developers and entrepreneurs, those are the most creative people on the planet, and they're going to think of new ways to use this and apply it that we would have never thought. And that is really satisfying.
That's really neat. So, I use IFT and then that. I think it's called IFT and Zapier and all these software services to kind of string together various routines. Even the car has one. There's a BMW Connect thing in IFT that, you can get it to read your emails or, show me my calendar of the day and things like that. So, but it's complex. I actually have a Visio document of outlining everything, what everything's connected to, how to turn on things. My mom will come and visit, kind of house sit for us when we're out of town. So we came back from a vacation and all of the lights were off. I couldn't turn them on. I was, Alexa, turn on hallway. Alexa, turn on bathroom. And none of them worked. The light bulb out, something broken. No, she had used a physical switch.
Right.
And completely threw me for a loop.
Yeah, it kills all the smart.
Yeah. So I've got to leave her notes now of how to turn things on.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, we have a role in this, but I think we collectively, as smart home industry, those are the problems we're trying to solve. I mean, the trappers of the world are going to figure this stuff out, and they're going to be investing their time and their dollars into working it all out and getting it working exactly the way they want to. But people who are not, well-motivated home automation enthusiasts still need to be successful in this too. And that's what we need to get to, where it can be, fairly obvious whether you're using your voice or a switch on the wall or something, that the thing that you want to happen will happen, pretty naturally. And there are some challenges to that right now, but bit by bit, I think we're solving those.
Excellent. So last year I had Alex Capslatro, had him on the show, and he was talking about what Josh AI does, and it's all verbal, it's all voice based. Do you guys get into that realm, or are you more in the back end of it?
No, we do. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, our theme with the type of platform that we're trying to be is that we want to work with everything, not just the individual products, but also the types of user interfaces. And so we're open and agnostic about all of that. And so I think we were the first, or among the first, smart home skills on Alexa, for instance, and then on Google Assistant as well, which are obviously the two mainstream ones. And so we pretty quickly figured out how to incorporate voice invocations into running of routines and actions that consumers want to do. That was very exciting, but we think that voice is only a fraction of how the smart home really should work. I mean, it's great for what it does, but that's not the beginning and the end of the smart home. I mean, voice is actually not about smart home. It's about, what's the term? The obedient home. Tell the home to do something, and hopefully it does it. The home starts getting smart when it does things without you having to ask or push a button or whatever, the things that you actually wanted to do. Now, it's not smart if it's automatically doing things that you actually did not want it to do. So that's the tricky part about applying AI and machine learning to the smart home. And that part will continue to evolve, and that's going to take years, I think, for that to get where we all want it to be, to where it's perfectly smart and doing the things in anticipation of your wants and needs. But in the meantime, we are kind of at the stage where we want the home just to be obedient, and voice is one way to do that. Button pushes are a way to do that. I described the key fob thing. That's a great example of, I'm pushing a button because I intentionally want to make this routine run. Or smartwatches that many of us wear right now. We can run routines directly from there. You can run them obviously from your phone or even from your lock screen. And I think in the not distant future, we'll have gesture-based interfaces that will be sort of around us all the time. We'll be able to signal to turn the lights up and down or the music off or change the channel or whatever. It's really neat what's happened over the last couple of years with voice, getting everybody excited about the smart home. Honestly, because we've been in the smart home for a long time and have a free app, we get to see the trends of, how people are adopting smart home. And when Alexa came out, the hockey stick moment happened for our industry, and we see that very clearly in our own charts. And so that's awesome. That's a great role that voice assistants are playing right now. But there's so much more, and we, together with many of our partners, continue to try to push the ball forward and making sure that all of the other ways that you interface with a home and with your devices and with your automobile are progressing in a way that, again, the mother-in-law is going to be able to deal with just as well as you can.
Intuitive enough that anybody can use it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you go about building this company? I mean, you mentioned your role at Tendril, and that was CTO.
Right. I've spent a lot of time in startups throughout my career. This is the fourth startup that I've been involved in. But the first time that I'd been a founder, I didn't go off and found a company straight out of college, which some people do and are successful at it. I'm glad that, I was a bit more mature in my career before I got around to doing it, because I had, some good sort of learnings and scar tissue, as well as a hell of a good network along the way, which is materially important. And if I'd have done this in my 20s, I probably would have done it completely differently. But the way that we went about it with this one is in an extremely lean way. What we experienced at Tendril at the time, and again, Tendril's had a great story, but it's it's been definitely not a straight line to success. And some of those non-successful moments at Tendril, we were raising a lot of money well ahead of before we proved the product market fit. And
ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was definitely ahead of its time. But it was a very exciting vision. There was a time when clean tech, green tech as a VC category was hot. And so it was incredible to me kind of being in the co-pilot seat of that one to see just how much money we could raise and how easy it was. Nothing's ever easy, but the people were very lining up to write big checks.
What year was this?
It was I got there in 2008, and that was sort of right when things were starting to take off. So that Tim Enwall had started the company a few years earlier, and they just started raising a lot of money, and then we round after round after round, we raised $100 million.
With a product to show for it, or just to get to market?
Yeah, no, we had a great product to show for it. We spent that money building a great platform and a suite of hardware devices. We were building our own thermostats, our own smart plugs, our own displays, and things like that, in addition to this cloud platform, before we had really demonstrated the product market fit. And obviously we had some regrets about how that all transpired. And so when we got around to starting Yonomi, the pendulum for me had swung way to the other side. We knew, this was 2013 that we started Yonomi, we knew that it was a very early days for smart home. This was definitely not mainstream yet. There weren't that many devices on the market, but I could see very clearly where things were going and the need for somebody to be an integrator that makes it all work well together, and how consumers can benefit and device manufacturers can benefit. And I could see that virtuous cycle playing out over the next 10 years. But I'm very mindful of product market fit, and I still am today. And so we said, let's raise as little money as we can, as opposed to get as much money as we can find so that we can have enough ammunition to go take over this market. We said, let's try not raising any money at first. And we didn't for 2 years. It was a hard 2 years because the three founders, we weren't paying ourselves. We had no income. We had a few expenses. We were working basically out of our house in co-working spaces in Boulder and Austin. And it was tough times, but we were building this platform. We were getting some validation in the market from some of the device manufacturers, from some retailers, and ultimately from users. And so each point along the way when we said, okay, we got some meaningful validation, whether that meant revenue or user spike or endorsement by somebody who mattered in the space. And we're like, okay, now it's time to raise some money. And then we went out and we raised just a little bit of money where we could actually start getting salaries, and our spouses got a little bit happier, less unhappy. Yeah. And we could hire a few employees at that point and go faster. And then, hit some more milestones that were revenue and some growth-oriented things. I'm like, okay, now it's time to raise a little bit more money. And that's the pattern that we've done along the way. So we haven't had our last round was a $5 million round for, by, I think, startup standards. It's not a huge pile of money, right?
Drop in the bucket.
Yeah. But by far, that was the most money, we'd ever brought into the company. We only did it at a time when we said, okay, now it's starting to happen. So that's one of the routes that we've taken that I think has served us very well. And along the way, it's served everybody well. The investors who have come in the company, we do feel like we can justifiably say, we are creating value with the funds that you brought into the company, and that's going to be, one day a nice return for you. It's not going to be, pissing into the wind, type of thing. This is meaningful, and we can demonstrate it.
So taking the slow, deliberate approach
yeah
probably allows you to a little more leeway in developing your stuff.
Yeah,
you don't have VCs or private equity.
Yeah, exactly. With a time frame that this fund's got to deliver, return by X date. Yeah, that's the other thing along the way is not only have we not brought in too much money, we've brought it in from sources who are patient as well, and that's been really meaningful for us, and will continue to be important.
So how did you find those investors? I mean, before we hit record, you were talking about some non-conventional ways that brought investors on.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that anytime I get approached by peers who are working on startups or thinking about doing a startup and ask me for advice, say, well, here's what I've learned is that there are other sources of investment dollars other than traditional institutional VCs, and not to denigrate traditional institutional VCs, they have their place in the ecosystem for sure. We all need them. However, you only really want to be in business with them when you're in the growth phase. That's what they want to be honest. They would like for you to not, waste their time until you've got a demonstrably growing business with, compounding, annual recurring revenue. And then at that point, they want to throw tons of money at you. But until then, they really don't want to be bothered with you. And they're not patient, as you mentioned, either. So that's why they want the ones that are clearly taking off right now are going to have a return, within the next 5 years. So where we've sort of found success in investment and strategic relationships is through strategic investors. And what that is companies, existing, successful, often public companies who are profitable and generating cash and have a vision for their own future, which you help them achieve in some way. So in our case, those companies who have invested in our company first became customers of ours. They licensed our platform and enabled them to launch new products and achieve things that they weren't going to be able to do themselves, at least not soon enough, and do it in a way that, after they've surveyed the landscape, they see as very unique, in terms of our IP and capability. And then they become believers in it. They're like, boy, everybody's going to need this. Like, look what it's done for us. Everybody's going to need this. This is actually going to be a very exciting business. So as an investor, we would like to participate in that. And furthermore, because it is a long road, and while that exciting moment is going to come when this is going to be a very successful investment. But in the meantime, we also want you to not go away. We want you not to go out of business or anything else. We want to make sure you're well funded along the way too, because that's also in their vested interest. So for us, that has been a really good formula, and it's tricky. It's not for everybody, and you do have to be very conscious of who those investors are, and the clear criteria that I just outlined are important too. But the personal relationships and level of trust that you have with your investors, whether they're strategic or VCs or angels or whomever, is also really critical. And I feel like we've been very successful in getting into business with good people.
Mm-hmm. So they pay you to not go away. They don't want to acquire you because it's not their specialty, right?
Right. It's not their business. It's not their core competency. They're never going to be, a software Internet of Things platform themselves. They're making, devices, locks or whatever, completely different adjacent business that needs our business too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is that like some companies have internal incubators or internal R&D? You guys are just kind of like an external version of that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the cash that companies like that generate, clearly they do invest in their own R&D, and they should, because, they're innovative companies. They're creating new technologies and new products themselves all the time. But I think, there still is excess cash going into these businesses that's got to go somewhere, right? They, can pay dividends. You only, can justify doing so much R&D. And so increasingly what I've observed is many, if not most, public companies that are in any kind of technology space are creating venture funds themselves. And they all manage them slightly differently. They don't manage them like VCs, but they are basically out there making various bets. They're accelerating their own sort of product roadmaps by making these investments and putting that money into something that is very likely to have a return.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So let's circle back. You had mentioned Austin, and I think that's an interesting story. So you guys are headquartered in Boulder, Colorado, as well as Austin, Texas. So just kind of share homes there.
Yeah, co-headquartered, and this is not a typical thing that a startup does. We've broken a lot of the rules along the way, I think, and this is one of them. And we did it right from the beginning, and we did it with our eyes wide open. But I felt very strongly, and my co-founders felt very strongly that for the thing that we were trying to do, it was going to be hard, and there are very few people on the planet probably have the right combination of skills, perspective, relationships that could really pull this thing off. And there were three of us who we were quite sure we were the right three to do this. And as it turns out, we were not in the same city. Two of us were in Austin, and one of us was in Boulder. And we had the heart-to-heart discussion, like, well, can you guys see moving to Boulder? Well, no, not really, various reasons, family reasons or whatever. And likewise, the answer from me going back the other direction was the same. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll just have to make this work then. And so it has gone, and it has worked, in fact, and not without its challenges, no doubt. But at this point, as we were discussing earlier, it's a huge asset for us to be in two cities, especially those two cities, because here we are, a growing company. We're not explosively growing, but it's really important when you're in a technology business, when you're in a software business. It's extremely competitive, one, for talent, and two, it's materially important that you get great people, like not just good people. You have to have people that are just, among the best in the world at what they do. And so what being in two locations has allowed us is, hey, each time we open a new position that we're going to hire for a senior software engineer, we put that rec out into both communities, and wherever we find that great person first, we will hire them, and we are completely agnostic about where that's going to be. And as a result, over the years, the team has grown, in both places about evenly. It's been pretty balanced, interestingly. And we see a lot of great talent kind of come through for those positions. And so it's a huge asset for us in terms of being able to grow and keep the team very high quality. And I see, some of my peers doing startups in one location, Boulder specifically, where competition is very fierce for talent, and it is rough going out there at times, and the consequence of not being able to hire that great person is nothing but bad for a company. And then they start looking to try to outsource it or do it offshore or something like that, and I rarely see those experiments go well.
So you're not siloed by any means.
No.
It's not like sales is in one place, engineering is in another location.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, how do you build culture?
Yeah, it is culture. You're exactly right. I mean, people like to talk about process, and yeah, we have some good process for, how things get communicated and the type agile process and everything else. But at the end of the day, it is about the culture and about relationships. And so one of the things that we have as a small company, very lean, another unusual thing we do is we have an open travel policy. It's like anybody can travel to the other site whenever they want. It doesn't have to be an event, not a meeting or anything else. Just schedule a flight, go there and be there. We got plenty of desks in both places. So just show up with your laptop and that's where you work. And we encourage people to do that. Not everybody, has the flexibility to do that very often, but some people do. And so we see that happening very, very frequently. And it's different. I mean, of course, we have great video conferencing, and we do our stand-ups and our company meetings over video. And that's the other thing is, like, everybody be on the video, even if you're working from home, have your camera on. We want to see your face. But that's still not the same as being in person with somebody, which is great. We're having this conversation in person. It's very different than doing it over the telephone, right? And so we really encourage this culture of spending time together, in the office, working together, but also out of the office. Again, nothing's mandatory, nothing's required. You're not ordered to go have fun with your teammates, but it is a side effect of spending time together. Is you form these friendships, at least, collegial friendships. And then you go out and breaking bread together, having a meal or having a beer or going for a hike or what it is, just makes your team stronger and the communication get better. And we don't have a lot of the friction that I've heard from some of my peers who have companies in multiple sites where it feels like there's this internal weird competition type of thing. We have none of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not nirvana or anything, but I think we've avoided some of the nasty side effects of having multiple sites.
So I was reading, I think it was the book Hooked, and they were talking about, which is a phenomenal book about building products if you haven't read it. They were talking about Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center in the Bay Area, and the headquarters, which was on the East Coast, I think New York, and it wasn't they weren't friends. They were nearly pitted against each other, and we've seen what Xerox developed some really awesome technology, but their name's not on any of it now.
Right.
So when I was reading that passage, I wondered, if they were more collaborative, would there be the Xerox mouse or would there be the Xerox operating system?
Right.
So a while back, you touched on building, being lean and being intentional when you build stuff like this. Give me some examples of what you've seen that could have been done differently and how you're implementing that here.
It's a good question because I think in the end, it is a little bit of a culture where individuals, get a lot of authority to make decisions. And, it is sort of baked into our culture to try to do things, very lightweight and inexpensively. And it's interesting, we're in this business of smart home, and there's a lot of gear that goes with that we're testing. You got a short tour of the office. We have a test lab over there in the other space. It's probably at this point accumulated over the years. There's a few thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of stuff over there. But over time, we just get the minimal that we need. Like let's not outfit everything. Like let's focus on this right now. Belkin Wemo. Well, I'll get $50 Belkin Wemo gear. We'll work with it. We'll live with it. We'll integrate it. And we'll bring it into our user experience. And we're not blowing it out. We're not hiring a QA team. Like we're all QA. We're all product managers. And, if you've got good talent and you're scrappy, you figure out how to do all those things. We're all, technical docs. We're, to a certain extent, we're all sales engineers and salespeople. And so we require everybody to wear a lot of hats and empower them to make decisions about how to get stuff done and get it done well. And as a result, it turns out that, we get way more done than companies, 2-3 times our size who, have a lot of formality in the process, and stovepipes of functionality, like I said, QA and tech docs and product management and everything else. And of course, you can't scale that forever, to be honest. And, we are starting today at 25 people that we are today to specialize a little bit in things. We're not, jack of all trades, all of us all the time anymore. But I think, as you start that way, it allows you to just do way more with less. And it goes faster too, because everybody has an ownership. You're not waiting on somebody else to make a decision. You kind of are the product manager for that.
There's no red tape. No,
certainly no red tape. Yeah. I mean, you do get to the point where you start to have certain types of, policies and things like this here and there, but, very little, that's an example, like whether it's hiring or HR or types of things. Do as little as you need to do a good job. There's a bunch of things that you could do and arguably should do, and good companies have a habit of doing. But if we sort of eschew, a lot of that tradition and just say, but what do we really need to do to get our job done right now? Let's just do that.
Very intentional.
Yeah, very intentional. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your favorite part of being a CEO?
Boy, great question. I don't know. I mean, I never set out to be a CEO. I've known people who said, I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur and I was going to be a CEO. that wasn't me. I ended up here just because I knew what I wanted to work on, and nobody else was working on that. I probably would have happily gone to work for somebody else who was trying to execute on this vision that I had in my own head. Like, yeah, if somebody would pay me to do that, it'd be fantastic. But nobody was doing that. So it was almost, reluctant, like, crap, I guess we just got to do this. And it was, I was the more senior of the three co-founders, so it was a more sort of natural role for me to be in. So what I still don't know the answer to that CEO question, but I do know that I like leadership, and I really enjoy, what people like to call servant leadership, where I'm hardly directing things around here. Most days it feels like, but I am just trying to continually create an environment where the real smart people who are not me can get a lot of stuff done, have fun doing it, and be successful. So I spend equal amounts of time, just making sure that the snack kitchen's full, that we've got everything sort of taken care of, so that smart people don't have to worry about the little things. Funding is taken care of, rent's paid, and benefits are happening, and improving, and things like that. So just the Maslow hierarchy of needs, just making sure that the lowest level of those, are things that nobody has to spend any energy on, and they're really spending energy on the creative stuff and the really hard work that we're doing. So I get a lot of thrill out of just enabling great teams and building teams, and hire, hopefully creating a good culture, and that's the thrill for me. Is I'm hardly the guy spiking the ball in the end zone, but when I see my teammates doing that, that's fun for me.
What's the most challenging part that you didn't expect to run into?
Fundraising, and which is a funny thing to say, because everybody knows that is the CEO's job, is making sure the company is properly capitalized. So I knew that was my job, and I knew that it was not easy. I don't think I appreciated how not easy it was going to be along the way, and it's never done either. You close a round of financing, and you better be thinking pretty quickly about that next one and how you're going to get there and the milestones you need to hit and everything else. And that part, is pretty, that's the one, as much as I talk about enabling the other team to do all the magic that they do. I mean, that's the one thing that is pretty solely in my hands, and it's quite a large responsibility. But it's fun too, because the way that you go about doing it is you go out and talk to people about the vision and what's exciting about it, and how you can demonstrate that you're making progress towards that. And that is the reason I got in here, is like, we care passionately about this thing that we're trying to do. So I love talking to people about it, and I can be very authentic. But the frustrating thing is as excited as I am about it, you sometimes go talk to investors, and they're like, miraculously, they're not as excited about it. They're like, yeah, I don't know. I hear, input, your buzzword of the day is hot. I hear, CRM is great. I'm like, oh, well, it sounds pretty boring to me. Good luck with that. So anyway, yeah, it's hard, and you never finish with that. So that's the part I must say that is not as enjoyable, although there are moments of joy in it.
Yeah, nobody's ever talked about that before on these interviews, of the challenge of raising money.
Yeah, well, I think we all go through it. I think anybody who's been a founder or a CEO has gone through it. And actually, I think there are folks, maybe even the majority of people who find themselves in the CEO seat, actually do like it, or probably are better at it than I am, to be honest. That it fits their personality type a little bit better than it does mine. I think I don't know which attribute it is, but I think humility sometimes doesn't serve you well at certain times, and I can't overcome my own humility, and I think that's why maybe that makes it a little bit difficult for me. But the truth is, I think everybody struggles with it. It is hard. It's never easy, even when you're quote unquote really good at it. There's nothing easy about it. It's sort of like deal making in a way, but I see it differently. Like I love, like winning a deal with a customer who's going to use our platform and pay us money for that. And, I get excited about what their business is going to be like when using this and everything else. And I get so excited to go close that deal and everything else. An investment, isn't quite the same. It sort of is, because I feel like, this is going to be a great thing for you, our company is going to be successful and is going to be a return for you. But, that return's a long ways away, probably for you. And we do need you to be patient. We need you to be on board with the vision and everything else. So there's something that's not quite as satisfying about doing those deals as opposed to the deals where people are actually paying you for product.
Mm-hmm. So what are you guys working on now?
Well, we are working on a lot of things. So today already in our platform, we have integrated over 200 different smart home products, and then continue to expand the functionality of the platform. We actually have two platforms, one for device manufacturers who want to get online or connected, and another that is the integration platform for everything, whether it's connected through a Yonomi piece of software or not. And so we're always augmenting functionality, but the really tangible things that we get to point to and get our customers and partners excited about is when we do new integrations with new products that we haven't had in the platform before. And you're going to see a lot of those coming out in the next few months throughout the fall and fourth quarter of this year. We're pretty excited. A lot of these things have been under development for a long time, and I'm not going to pre-announce them, but some neat new products, some that are actually brand new to market from startup companies that you might not have heard of before, and others from giant companies that you definitely have heard of before, but they're new product categories for us. We've focused a lot to date on lighting and locks and switches and motion sensors and speakers, music and voice assistants. And as the smart home is sort of expanding in the mainstream into other device types, more kind of appliance-y device types and doorbells and things like that, you'll see a lot of that stuff coming into the platform, which is going to be very exciting and create, I think, a lot of value for our users and customers.
So I understand not wanting to talk about the near-term stuff, but what is 5 years out? What does the connected home look like with Yonomi? Like if you could, wave your magic wand and conjure up a vision, what would that look like?
Yeah, well, I think what it looks like, it's hard to paint the picture because actually, in my view, the best technology, especially when you're talking about the smart home, is invisible. Like you don't really experience. It's not as if it's a new thing that you hold in your hand and you're pushing buttons on or anything else. As a matter of fact, if it's a smart home, there are no buttons, or it's just doing what it is. Or if it is a button, it looks like that old button. It just does, has more richer capability now. And so, I think 5-10 years from now, what it looks like is the comfort and convenience and safety and security that you have in your home is materially enhanced. And you look back and maybe even you could tell your kids about how the old days were, about how things work differently. And, it'll be like maybe today when we are telling our kids like, oh yeah, telephones, the way those used to be, they were like hooked to the wall and they had cords and you couldn't take them with you, or they rang and you didn't know who was calling and you had to pick it up to find out, and all these things. Like hopefully 5-10 years from now, there'll be a new generation of parents telling their kids about how houses used to be just way different than they are today. And they'll be the way we were talking about phones, like, oh yeah, phones back then kind of sucked. The simplicity maybe, and the fact that you don't always have them with you, there's some good nostalgic memories you have about those things. But for the most part, demonstrably, those were the bad old days, and these are the good new days. And hopefully we'll be saying that about the home, because it'll be easier, it will be more comfortable, secure, use less energy, and people will be healthier. I literally believe that wellness, it will improve as homes become smarter and can help create a more healthy environment. I think aging people will stay in their home longer as a result of that. And I think that people will sleep better, literally, because environmental conditions will be, just more able to be controlled. And it will be, a great new world. It's not going to be this dystopian. I mean, it might be totally utopian is the way I'm describing it, but I think it'll be demonstrably, we will have moved the ball forward. And Yonomi will have a big role in that. I think, we're certainly not the only player, but I think there's a very clear scenario, whether you're using Yonomi or not, that it's in some part of the user experience that you as a homeowner, wherever you are in the world, literally, which is what's exciting about this space. It's literally a global market. Every home will be a connected home. Whether, as you're driving up to your house, the house recognizes that it's your car, and the right garage door opens and the lights come on, and the music comes on in your home, and everything is safe and secure and comfortable, and your family's well and well looked after as a result of all of that. Like somewhere in that experience, there's going to be a piece of Yonomi technology, and this is the humility part I think that we have of the company is, sure, it'd be great if everybody knew that brand name Yonomi, but it's probably not. You're going to identify that with your BMW or with your Roomba or with your light switch or your door lock or whatever, that experience that you just had, but we'll have helped enable that in some way. And that's what gets us out of bed every day.
I like that vision. Two things kind of came to mind when you were talking about that was our kids won't understand what it was like back then. Just like we're not amazed because we hit the light switch and miraculously the lights come on.
Yeah, right.
We never had to light an oil or a gas light to see in the house. We just hit the button and the light comes on and we go about our day. So it doesn't mean we're any less thankful or grateful for it, because when Excel goes down and power goes out, then you think about it.
Yeah, indeed.
And then also there's a scene in Back to the Future too where Elijah Woods is playing a video game, like an arcade game, and Marty McFly walks up to it and shows the kid how to do it. And I think it's like Duck Hunt, one of those shooting games. And Elijah Wood looks at him and he's like, "You mean you have to use your hands?" It's you have to get up to turn the light switch. You have to get up to change the channel.
Yeah,
well, I guess you don't have to get up and change the channel now, but
we'll just think it then, and it'll just happen.
I like that.
Yeah,
I can't appreciate having you on Colorado TechCast today and inviting me up to your beautiful location. It's a little warm, but the umbrella helps.
Yeah, it's heating up.
I think what you guys are doing is really cool. I can't wait to see 5 years from now what a smart home truly looks like. Right now it's kind of a mishmash of stuff, which is obviously annoying, but you guys are here trying to solve that. So
that's right. Yeah, I can't wait either. We have a vision, and it feels like we're getting closer and closer to that every day, but it still is, it's the long road. It wasn't a joke when I said, our jobs will never be done. There will continue to be more challenges and more complexity that we're trying to turn into simplicity from a user experience standpoint. But yeah, 5 years from now, I think, the house will be a completely different experience. And I look forward to seeing it as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Colorado TechCast. Visit our website at coloradotechcast.com for episode show notes with links to all the great resources we've talked about in this episode. While you're there, click the subscribe button in iTunes so you'll never miss a new episode. I'm Trapper Little, and I'll talk to you again on the next episode of Colorado TechCast.